I came back from lunch and found two men sitting at my desk. They hadn't touched my chair. That stood out. People always touch the chair. One of them was flipping through my yellow notepad, slow and careful, like it might stain his fingers. The other held a company laptop away from his body, as if it were warm or unstable. Both wore suits that didn't belong in a building where most people owned one blazer and forgot it at home. The taller one spoke first. "Ms. Keller," he said, not looking at me. "We're here to collect company assets. Your access has been revoked." He said it the way people say, "Your table is ready." I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I set my salad on the corner of the desk and listened to the air vent hum above us. Somewhere behind me, a printer jammed and beeped twice. Someone laughed down the hall. Normal sounds. I nodded and said, "Let me grab my bag." I didn't grab my bag. I reached under my chair, slid my hand into the fabric loop taped there months earlier, and pulled out the small drive I'd forgotten I'd ever hidden. It fit into my jacket pocket like it belonged there. When I walked past HR, the framed poster by the door caught my eye. "We grow together." Someone had straightened it recently. It was level. Outside, the afternoon felt too bright. The parking gate lifted without anyone looking at me. That part surprised me. I was standing in line at the garage when my phone vibrated. Not a text, a system log. No subject, just timestamps. Unauthorized access attempt. Permission escalation detected. Fallback protocol initializing. I stared at the screen until the letters stopped looking like letters. That protocol wasn't supposed to wake up. The man behind me was chewing gum, fast and angry, like it had offended him. The attendant waved me through. The gate dropped behind my car with a clean, final sound. I drove 3 blocks before I pulled over. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and sat there with my hands on the wheel. I didn't feel angry. That came later. What I felt was something quieter. Recognition. They hadn't just locked me out. They had gone somewhere they weren't supposed to go. The office had been quiet that morning. Wednesday quiet. The kind where people answer emails and pretend the week is shorter than it is. I remembered the smell of burnt coffee near the kitchenette, the way the lights flickered over the east windows around 11. I'd eaten lunch alone at the cafe downstairs. Same sandwich I always ordered. Same stool by the window. I remember checking the time because I was waiting on a deploy confirmation that never came. When I stepped back upstairs, my badge still worked. That mattered. The men were already there. They never raised their voices. They didn't threaten me. They didn't need to. The decision had already happened somewhere else, in a room I hadn't been invited into. As I drove, the phone vibrated again. Then again. More logs. Shorter now. Faster. Something was moving inside the system. Not breaking. Adjusting. I thought of the last commit I'd pushed 2 weeks earlier. I'd labeled it cleanup. Nothing dramatic, just structure, boundaries. I pulled into a grocery store lot I didn't usually use and shut the engine off. The building reflected back at me in the windshield, flat and colorless. Another vibration. A new line appeared on the screen. Fallback active, awaiting confirmation. I didn't touch it. I sat there with the engine cooling and listened to the ticking under the hood. Whatever they thought they'd removed from the building was still answering me, and someone, somewhere, was about to notice. I stayed parked a little longer than I needed to. Then I went inside and bought things I didn't plan to cook. When I came back out, I had a voicemail waiting. No message, just breathing, then silence. I didn't delete it. I drove home slowly, letting the city move around me, and waited to see who would speak first. I didn't go straight home. I stopped at a 24-hour laundromat a few blocks off Mercer. It was one of those places that smelled like warm detergent and old coins, the kind where the TV is always on but no one is watching. My building still didn't have appliances installed, and I hadn't felt like rushing the landlord. I fed quarters into a dryer and watched the drum turn. Socks, a hoodie, one work shirt I'd meant to donate. The phone sat on the plastic chair beside me, screen dark. I let it stay that way. 10 minutes passed, maybe 12. Then it lit up on its own. Martin, he worked in infrastructure. Used to bring me coffee every Tuesday without asking. We'd never talked about anything personal. That was fine. I answered on the third ring. "Hey," he said. His voice sounded thinner than I remembered. "We've got a situation." I smiled a little, though no one could see it. "You usually do." A pause. Machines hummed behind me. Somewhere a kid laughed, then got shushed. "There's duplication," he said. "Invoice replication across the EU node. It won't stop. Permissions won't take. Legal's losing it." I leaned back against the counter and watched the dryer light flicker. "Did you roll back?" "We can't. There's no rollback path." That told me enough. I picked up a quarter from the change tray and rolled it across my knuckles. "Is the fallback handling cache migration?" Silence. He didn't know because he wasn't supposed to know. That layer didn't exist on any diagram he'd ever seen. "You need to come in," he said finally. Quieter now. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see that either. "I don't." "This could mess up Zurich," he said, like permanently. I looked through the front window. Across the street, a man in a foam hot dog costume was arguing with a bus driver. The driver wasn't engaging. He'd learned something useful about boundaries. "Then corporate needs to send someone with more authority than you," I said. "Someone who understands what they touched." "What did they touch?" Martin asked. "Nothing you did," I said, "and nothing you can fix." I ended the call before he could apologize. The dryer buzzed. I folded my clothes slowly. One shirt still smelled like the office, recycled air and whatever cleaning spray they'd switched to after the holidays. Outside, the sky had gone that dull gray that makes it hard to tell what time it is. My phone buzzed again while I was loading the trunk. A text this time, from a number I didn't recognize. "They're in the big room. He said your name out loud." No punctuation. That meant it was probably Evan. He'd been my intern 3 summers ago. Smart kid. Nervous typer. I didn't respond. At home, I made tea and left the bag on the counter unopened. I sat at the small table by the window and watched the building across the street turn its lights on, one unit at a time. I opened the admin panel. The status indicator pulsed amber. Not green, not red. Waiting. I checked the logs. Clean timestamps, clean structure. Someone had tried to copy part of the core logic without understanding the dependency chain. It was clumsy, rushed. I recognized the fingerprints, even without a name attached. 3 hours later, Zurich went dark. Not slow, not unstable, just gone. This time, the call didn't come from Martin. It came as an email with a careful subject line, "Request for consultation." The sender was my former VP. Polite phrasing, no apology, just distance. I forwarded it to myself without opening it. Then I noticed something else, a VPN endpoint pinging from Singapore. The username looked familiar, just slightly wrong. An extra character, a hyphen where there shouldn't be one. Someone hadn't just removed me, they were practicing being me. I closed the laptop and let the tea go cold. Outside, a siren passed and faded. Inside, the system stayed amber. I didn't touch it. Then, I waited. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. No urgency, just habit. I made coffee the slow way and sat on the floor with my back against the couch, laptop balanced on a moving box. The city outside was already awake. Delivery trucks, a car alarm that stopped when someone yelled out a window. I opened the logs again. Someone new had been working overnight. Different rhythm, short commits, cosmetic changes, renaming functions, reordering comments. The kind of edits people make when they want to look busy without touching anything dangerous. But I could see what they were circling. They were trying to understand how decisions were made. I didn't design the system to be clever. I designed it to be cautious. Every major action left a trace. Every trace connected to a pattern. You couldn't rush it without showing your hand. By noon, I had a name. Not from HR, from the keys. A new SSH signature appeared twice, then vanished. It didn't belong to anyone on my old team. The access had been granted manually, high up, without a ticket. That narrowed things down. I checked the org chart out of curiosity. My role had already been sunset. A new title sat where mine used to be. Different words, same responsibilities. Reporting line straight up. I closed the chart. At 1:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Can we talk? No name, no greeting. I typed back one word. About what? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. About the system. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a document I hadn't touched in years. No header, no formatting. Just a list I'd written for myself after my 3rd layoff, back when I still believed preparation was paranoia. Rules, not emotions. Access before apology. Silence is data. Never interrupt a pattern mid-execution. I added a 4th line. Let them finish showing you who they are. By mid-afternoon, the internal chat channels started leaking outward. Screenshots, partial explanations. Phrases like unexpected behavior and deprecated automation kernel floated past my screen through forwarded messages I wasn't supposed to have. One of my former teammates sent a photo. Whiteboard, red marker, arrows everywhere. No names. Another message followed. They keep asking who built this layer. No one's answering. I closed the chat. At 4:52 p.m., an email finally came from the top. Carefully worded. Warm tone. Regret adjacent. We may have underestimated the complexity of certain legacy components. Legacy. I smiled at that. I replied with a single sentence. Which component are you referring to? It took them 9 minutes to respond. Too long. They didn't know. That was the first real shift. Not power. Clarity. I opened the admin panel again. Amber still pulsing. Watchdog active. Recording quietly. Every keystroke they made. Every meeting they thought was private. I didn't enable anything new. I didn't need to. At 6:30 p.m., a calendar notification appeared that I hadn't created. A meeting invite, marked optional. Strategy review, senior staff only. My name was listed as observer. I accepted it without comment. Then I shut the laptop and went for a walk. The sidewalk was cracked near the corner store. Someone had chalked a hopscotch grid and half the squares were smudged. I stepped around them and kept moving. When I came back, there was a voicemail waiting. This one had words. "We just need your guidance," a man said. I recognized the voice. He used to sign my performance reviews. "No one's blaming you." I deleted it. At 8:11 p.m., the system shifted on its own. Not a failure, a reclassification. Status changed from amber to violet. I hadn't seen that color in years. I sat very still and watched the timestamp lock in. Violet meant one thing. Containment was no longer my decision alone. I put the phone face down. Then I waited. I didn't sleep much that night, but I rested. There's a difference. Sleep is unconscious. Rest is intentional. I woke just before sunrise and made toast I didn't eat. The apartment was quiet enough that I could hear the refrigerator click on and off. I opened the laptop and set it on the table. No rush. Violet was steady. That told me the system wasn't reacting anymore. It was evaluating. I pulled up the activity map and watched the flow. Requests moving through layers they didn't understand. Permissions granted, then silently downgraded. Not blocked, redirected. That was important. If you want truth, you don't shut people out. You let them keep going and record where they step. I thought in steps. I always do when things get noisy. Step 1. Let them commit. Step 2. Let them explain. Step 3. Show the difference. At 9:03 a.m., the internal message went out company-wide, carefully vague, acknowledging temporary instability, promising transparency, asking for patience. I noticed my name wasn't mentioned. At 9:17, a private message came through from someone in finance. We'd never spoken directly before. We need assurance the exposure is contained. I read it twice, then once more. Contained meant liability, not systems. I replied with a question. Which exposure? No answer. At 10:40, a new commit appeared, larger this time. Someone had stopped pretending. They were rewriting behavior logic, trying to smooth over decision thresholds without understanding why they existed. It was sloppy, confident, the kind of work that assumes forgiveness comes with the job title. I tagged the commit internally, not to stop it, just to mark it. Violet adjusted. Latency increased by fractions of a second. Error messages stayed polite but less helpful. Logs grew longer. Nothing crashed. Everything slowed. By noon, they were in meetings. I could tell by the gaps. No activity for 20 minutes at a time, then bursts of confused changes. Someone suggested a rollback. Someone else vetoed it. Too many dependencies. Too many unknowns. I watched the system do exactly what it had been designed to do when trust degraded. It documented. At 1:12 p.m., a new user accessed the admin layer using credentials that looked like mine from a distance. Same structure, wrong signature. That was the moment I leaned back. They weren't fixing anything. They were replacing. I pulled up the verification history and cross-referenced it with HR onboarding logs. The account had been created weeks ago. Quietly. Special classification. Reporting line above the usual chain. Someone had planned this. I didn't feel surprised. I felt organized. Step 1 was complete. I exported a snapshot. Not the data itself, just the record of intent. Who touched what, when, under which assumption. At 2:45, my phone rang again. This time, I answered. "We need to align," the voice said. "Higher up now. Measured. Professional. There seems to be confusion about ownership." "There isn't," I said. "There's documentation." A pause. Papers shifting. "We're asking for cooperation." "I'm observing," I said, like the invite said. Another pause. Longer this time. At 4:30, someone leaked a screenshot externally. An internal diagram with red arrows and a label that read, "Malicious injection?" The question mark was doing a lot of work. That was step 2. Let them explain. I watched the explanations mutate as they traveled, from error to anomaly to possible insider action. Each version further from the truth, each one harder to defend. At 6:18, an email landed in my inbox with the subject line, "Urgent." The body was careful, apologetic adjacent, requesting a call, suggesting misunderstandings. I didn't open it. Instead, I opened the recording queue Violet had been building all day. Meetings, side calls, one screen share that ended too quickly, a document labeled Transition Support that mentioned my role in the past tense. I selected 3 files and queued them, not to send, just to be ready. Outside, the sky was dimming. Someone upstairs was playing music, low and steady. I closed the laptop and washed the mug I'd been using all day, even though it wasn't dirty. When I sat back down, there was a new calendar invite. Emergency session, board included. This one wasn't optional. I accepted it. Violet pulsed once, then held. I put the phone face down and waited for the meeting to start. The meeting opened the way those meetings always do. Muted microphones, faces adjusting to their own reflections, someone asking if everyone could see the screen. I stayed still and let the camera frame me the way it wanted to. No one greeted me. That told me who was nervous. The chair cleared his throat and thanked everyone for making time. He used words like alignment and shared goals. I listened without reacting. My name came up on the third slide, not as a speaker, but as a footnote. Former role, legacy contributor. I waited. They presented a timeline that skipped weeks at a time. They described instability as if it had weather. Unpredictable. Unfortunate. No single source. When it was my turn, no one invited me. I unmuted myself anyway. I want to clarify the record, I said. Calm. Even. Before we discuss remediation. A few heads lifted. Someone stopped typing. I shared my screen. Not the system. The logs. Time-stamped. Unedited. A clean sequence showing when access was granted, when patterns changed, when permissions shifted hands. I didn't explain them. I let them sit there. Silence stretched. Then someone spoke from legal. Can you contextualize what we're seeing? Yes, I said. It's the moment responsibility changed without accountability. I moved to the next file. A calendar entry. Private. Executive only. Created while I was still employed. The title included the word clone. No reaction. Just blinking. I didn't look at anyone in particular when I spoke again. This system didn't fail. It followed instructions. Some of those instructions weren't authorized. A voice I recognized tried to interrupt. I muted him. No one objected. I played a short audio clip, 30 seconds. No faces, just voices discussing timelines, replacements, and the inconvenience of retraining someone new. Someone inhaled sharply. Another person looked away from their camera. I stopped the clip before it finished. That's enough context, I said. The chair thanked me. He didn't mean it. That was fine. They asked what I wanted. I didn't answer right away. I pulled up one more document, a comparison. Original architecture on the left, modified version on the right. Highlighted discrepancies. The parts that had been rushed. The safeguards removed. This is where the instability comes from, I said. Not malice. Impatience. There were questions after that. Lots of them. I answered some. I ignored others. I corrected 2 statements without raising my voice. When someone suggested collaboration, I nodded once. At a later stage, I said, after disclosure. The meeting ended without a vote, without a conclusion. That was the point. Afterward, my inbox filled faster than I could read. Apologies that didn't use the word sorry. Invitations framed as opportunities. Messages that assumed closeness we hadn't earned. I closed the laptop. Violet remained steady. That night, I ate standing at the counter and watched the city lights come on again. Somewhere, a siren wailed and faded. My phone buzzed once more. A direct message. From the top. What will it take to stabilize this? I typed back slowly. Truth. On record. Then I set the phone down and let the room go quiet. Outside, traffic moved in clean lines. Inside, the system waited for its final instruction. So did I. The record came together faster once it was no longer optional. By morning, there were documents. Not summaries, originals. Board notes with tracked changes still visible. Approval chains that stopped one signature short of legitimacy. A hiring packet created outside normal review, justified as strategic continuity. I didn't have to ask for them. They were uploaded to the shared folder labeled Independent Review by someone in compliance who hadn't slept. The timestamps told me that much. I opened each file once. I didn't annotate. I didn't highlight. The truth doesn't need emphasis when it's arranged properly. At 9:12 a.m., a third party joined the process. External audit, neutral tone, no allegiance. They asked for logs. They got them. They asked for recordings. Violet released them in sequence, watermarked and complete. Nothing sensational, just clear. By noon, Zurich suspended their contract pending explanation. That wasn't punishment, it was procedure. Their legal team didn't raise their voices. They sent a letter. Couriered. Signature required. At 1:40, the internal chat went quiet. That's how you know things are real. When no one's trying to control the narrative anymore. At 2:15, the announcement went out. Executive resignation, effective immediately. Language careful. Responsibility acknowledged without confession. Oversight failure. Loss of confidence. Interim leadership appointed. My name appeared once. Credited. Neutral. I watched it from the same chair I'd used all week. The light had shifted across the floor. I noticed dust I'd missed when I cleaned. An hour later, legal sent a second message. This one was short. Your compensation package has been reinstated. All unvested equity restored retroactively. I forwarded it to my personal email and archived the thread. No celebration. At 4:30, a request came in from the auditors. One final confirmation. A single question. Can the system be stabilized without further disruption? I opened the admin panel for the first time that day. Violet pulsed once. Yes, I typed, if no one interferes. There was a pause, then approval. I executed the command I'd avoided all week. One line, no flourish. The system didn't surge, it didn't celebrate. It settled. Pipelines realigned, queues drained. The status returned to green, steady and unremarkable. That was the point. By early evening, clients were notified. Carefully, factually, no blame assigned. The dashboards refreshed without banners or explanations, just numbers behaving the way numbers should. I logged out. My phone buzzed once more that night. A message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. You were right to leave when you did. I didn't reply. Instead, I shut the laptop down completely and placed it back in the box it had come from. I washed the mug in the sink and dried it with a towel that smelled faintly of detergent. Outside, the city sounded normal again. I sat on the couch and let the quiet hold. There was nothing left to prove. Only one thing left to decide. And that could wait until morning. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm. Sunlight came in through the window at an angle that made everything look softer than it had all week. I stood in the kitchen and rinsed a cup I hadn't used yet. Old habit. Reset the space before starting anything new. I didn't check my email right away. I made oatmeal, stirred it slowly, ate it standing at the counter while the city came online outside. Someone downstairs dragged a trash bin across concrete. A delivery truck idled, then moved on. Normal sounds again. When I finally opened my phone, there were messages I didn't need to read closely. Recruiters, former colleagues, a few apologies written carefully enough to avoid responsibility. I archived most of them without opening. One message I did read came from the interim operations lead. Short, professional, system stable, no further action required. Thank you. I replied with a thumbs up and nothing else. That was enough. I spent the rest of the morning doing things that had nothing to do with work. I reorganized a drawer that had been bothering me, threw out expired batteries, folded a jacket I'd left on a chair for too long. Around noon, I took a walk. The sidewalk near my building had been patched overnight. Fresh asphalt, dark and uneven. Someone had painted a crooked orange line around it like a warning and a promise at the same time. I stepped over it and kept going. At the corner cafe, the barista didn't recognize me. That felt right. I ordered tea and sat by the window, watching people hurry past things they didn't understand yet. That's when I noticed the email I almost missed. Different company, different city, someone I'd never met. The subject line read, "Quiet question." The message itself was simple. I think they're slowly pushing me out while asking me to document everything. I don't know if I'm imagining it, but something feels wrong. No urgency, no accusation, just uncertainty. I didn't answer right away. I finished my tea, watched the steam fade. Let the question sit where it belonged. Some patterns repeat because people don't realize they're patterns. They think they're isolated events, personal failures, bad timing. They aren't. I walked home and set my keys in the bowl by the door. The apartment smelled clean, calm, owned. When I sat down at the table, I typed a careful reply. You're not imagining it. Start saving records. Don't announce anything, and don't rush. Silence is information. I sent it and closed the laptop. That evening, I cleaned the kitchen again, even though it didn't need it. I put on music low enough that it felt like part of the room, not something trying to fill it. Later, I stood by the window and watched the lights come on across the street, one by one. I felt settled, not triumphant, just clear. Some endings are loud. This one wasn't, and that was the point. If this story felt familiar to you, or if you've ever had that quiet sense that something at work didn't add up, you're not alone. If you're enjoying these calm, real stories, you can like the video and subscribe. It helps keep this space steady and thoughtful. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read those comments more than you think. 2 popular stories will be appearing next, and they follow a similar thread. Different people, different cities, same quiet turning point. Take care of yourself, and listen closely when things go quiet.